do you do anything in the old way? Like, is there anything that you do specifically? Like, I like sometimes like to print things out and read them on paper. Is there anything that you
Yeah,
do in
Oh
the old way?
Marcus, look over his little shoulder there. He likes real
Oh,
typewriters.
there we go.
yeah.
Hello, everyone. This is David Stark from Watch Our Pass, and today I'm joined by Marcos Gabriel and Chris Alender, the writer and director of The Old Ways, which is releasing on Blu-ray, DVD, and VOD on October 12th, 2021. We're going to talk to them in just a second, but first, let's check out the trailer. And while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. I'll spend a lot. Thank you.
Why did you go there? I told you, it was not safe.
Do you know these people?
The man, he is her son. He helps. The woman, she practices the old ways.
She's a bruja.
They don't believe they can let you go. They have seen something inside you. A demon.
There is no demon, Cristina.
My name is Cristina Lopez. I came to this place to die.
Thanks so much for joining me. This is Marcos Gabriel and Chris Alender, the writer and director of The Old Ways, which is releasing on DVD, Blu-ray, and digital on October 12th, 2021. It's an old-style exorcism film that has a Latin flair and also just really good practical effects. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Great description.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the movie speaks for itself, so it's easy to describe. What I love most is I looked at your bios, and just in the chronology of your bios, you've got some work before, and then you have the Muppets, and then you have The Old Ways. So I'm just curious, like, what dark demonic thing happened on the Muppet set to inspire this film?
No, the Muppets, always nothing demonic there. We've actually been doing Muppet stuff for probably close to 12 years, maybe.
A long time, yeah.
Like that, yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, way back. And that was actually after we'd probably already been working on it for a year before that. So, yeah, it's more just like we love making stuff with puppets and creatures and special effects and movie magic.
Very different puppets in this film than I think what you were working on before, but also very I can see the pedigree, because this film has really good practical effects. So I guess Marcos, you wrote this, so I guess what was the inspiration for this story? I mean, it feels like just a really good kind of old style exorcism film. Was there anything kind of that you were searching for, or is it drawn from personal experiences? Like, I don't know what your background was before.
Yeah, all of this. This is a lot of my own party footage from Cancun one last weekend.
You've got some weird parties, but hey, it looks like it could be some fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, it probably at the core was, that idea of, like you said, an old school style exorcism story or something like that. And that was, at first it was like, wow, it'd be really great to tell an exorcism story from a different point of view, being trapped with the person that has a demon inside of them. So I thought, well, that would be kind of an interesting story. And then in trying to keep freshening it up and making something that felt wholly original, I did draw back into some of my Latin roots. So I was born in Puerto Rico. My mother had told some really fascinating stories about brujas and spiritual healers and things like that on the island that really stuck with me. And I thought, wow, if I could tell a story with these sorts of elements, that would be really exciting and new and fresh and something I hadn't seen before. So those kind of all started cooking together in the same pot and started to become what would be the inception of The Old Ways.
Awesome. And my next question was going to be, are these based on like actual possession stories, exorcism stories? But it sounds like they are based on, stories that you heard as a kid.
I mean, certainly some of them are, there's things like the psychic surgery that happens in the movie. It's something that I'd seen videos of as a kid and was like, oh my God, that's really crazy looking. And we just started putting the filter on, okay, what if we were always trying to go further back than the current practice. So what was it before and before and before, if we could get back into the older and older ways. So with anything that we would find research on or become fascinated with, we would think like, what if we could figure out the practice that inspired this practice and keep bringing it backwards? So some of that was research before the script, and a lot of it was research after we had a first draft. And that's where Chris really, dug in, started finding some really cool things. And then we would find things and go like, okay, this needs to go in the movie. How do we write a scene around this or add this detail into it to be as, authentic but heightened as possible?
And where do you go to find these things? I'm imagining like in your like it's in every like animated show. There's like a library, and then there's the back library where there's flames and like bats and stuff. Like where did you go to find this information? Just
it was mostly Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or like spiritual healing.
Yeah, all over the place, really. I mean, books, the LA library.
What are books again? Is that
exactly.
Is that part of the old ways as well?
So it's what's cool, since nobody reads books, you go to the library and they're all just there, available. So we found stuff like that. I mean, we didn't really probably not much was based on an actual person's possession so much as we kind of based the practices on things that we saw and read about, and the way that the healer and the bruja acts and the kind of rituals she does. But Marcus kind of generated the actual demon and the possession and stuff like that from whole cloth from his head.
From his
Muppet experience.
Yeah, from his horrible Muppet trauma. And I think what was interesting about this film, and maybe it's just because I've seen a lot of Western style exorcism films, like having it set in, I don't know, is it a temple or a village, whatever it is, it lets you kind of see a bunch of nature and natural light, and it doesn't feel as kind of imposing, even though there are some terrible things that happen. It was kind of a very different feel from kind of your more traditional Western exorcism movies, where you've got this like old creepy house, and then the person's always in this dark room, and there's never any light, and all of a sudden there's mold everywhere. It felt like a very different, fresh take, as you were mentioning. Was that something that you were thinking of when you were writing? Was that something that you kind of just came to as you were researching these types of activities?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like we were always trying to push ourselves to do kind of take a slightly different approach than what we'd already seen in cinema. Not so much what we had seen in our research. We were trying to get to the heart of that. But if it felt like another movie we had seen before, because a lot of exorcism stories, I mean, they're scary because they have certain elements in them, right? So you see the upside down cross, or you see, the priest come in and he has a special order from the Vatican, and he's talked, and this is definitely a possession, and this is the demon. So all those elements are scary in those movies, but also they've been done an awful lot of times. So anytime it felt like, it was getting too close to that sort of stuff, we would try to take a different approach. So that certainly is part of the setting it in kind of this dilapidated compound in the jungle versus an old house with a lot of history of its own. The symbology that we put in there, we don't do, pentagrams and those kind of obvious things that you would see in a lot of movies that would do something like this. We were always trying to find our own visual language to speak. And Chris just did such an amazing job of capturing that like jungle feel. That whole set has its own personality, and it just all feels so different. Because we knew we were a contained movie, right? Yeah. Like a kind of a chamber drama. So we had to find ways to make every time you looked at the set, since we were going to spend a lot of time in there, every time in that location, it had to look interesting and fresh and different and hot and sweaty and humid and all those things. And I think Chris just did a phenomenal job capturing that and making it feel different than anything you've really seen.
I think that's just indie filmmaking. It's hot, sweaty, humid.
Yeah.
Well, we had an air conditioner, so it was. We had to fake it. But yeah, we really did want to make a colorful. Like, it's hard to. There's not that many horror movies that are like have colors and are bright, and that region obviously is so rich with light and fauna and flora, and then just the actual cultural colors, that they use in the paints and in the wardrobes. So we really wanted to tap into that and create something that we hadn't seen in this genre before, or at least I haven't seen. So I thought that was also just a different way to get into it and have something interesting and fresh.
Definitely. And so was this, did you find this location? Was this someplace that you kind of assembled somewhere in between? Like, where did you find this?
Yeah, we built it from scratch. It's just a big warehouse. So
That's awesome.
it's, I mean, we did location scouting for the exteriors and found a bunch of options for what the outside could look like. And then we kind of extrapolated backwards from that and imagined what the inside would be like. And just the idea, it's another opportunity to tap into some of the themes, which is the old ways. The jungle is just going to take it over. Like we imagined that this was like an old, like a Catholic mission came in and set up a little hospital in the jungle and thought they were going to, heal everybody. Didn't work out. They left and the jungle just took it back, as fast as it could. And so we built this set with that in mind, and it was a lot of dumpster diving and beg, borrow, and stealing, and a lot of tricks because we really only had about 4 walls in the whole place, and the rest was, we'd put up like brown, we'd paint burlap sacks and hang them, and then put a shelf or something in front of it, and then you don't realize that there's no wall behind it.
Movie magic at its finest.
Yeah, and we couldn't have ceilings because of fire code things, and there was a lot of stuff we had to do, tricks of the trade, I guess, to make it feel like we were in this real space, and then integrate it into the exterior footage that we filmed.
One of the cool things too was like because it took a while for that set to be constructed. I mean, it took weeks to construct it. So as it was coming together, we would realize different opportunities. So it was almost like, not exactly like shooting on location, but if you've written a script and then you go to the location and you're like, oh, the door's over here instead of here, or, oh, this window's way bigger, you could definitely see through it. It changes some of the decisions you're going to do as you shoot it. So the same sort of thing happened on this set where we had a script written, but as our production designer, Bryce Perrin, came in and started building it, and he had a very distinct vision that I think only he knew until the final days of what this was going to look like. He had built things like this bamboo cage that you could see through one room to the other, where in the script that was a wall. And now suddenly we realize we can see 20 feet over. And what does that do for us, knowing we can see through this material? And those things would then change the decisions we would do into the script. And then Chris also had an opportunity with his DP and first AD, to shoot a lot of these scenes just with them, right? And rubber snakes and, iPads and stuff, and really get to explore the set in a way that you could do if you knew the location intimately in advance, and you were like, okay, cool, this is all the angles were provided, so on the day you actually can execute something with a really, really clear plan.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to go through the cuts, be like, oh crap, we can see the McDonald's in the background, or whatever.
Yeah, and we built the whole set so it was fully standing, so we could shoot through it and across it. We could move from one portion to the other in real time. So there's a lot of opportunities there that we hadn't imagined beforehand, that we kind of imagined there'd be like this little set with fake walls on the other side, and this little set, and more compartmentalized. So once we kind of got it set up, we definitely approached it as location-y as we could. And other little things, like I think in this, or at least the way I imagine it as written, she was chained to the wall, which was starting to frustrate me, because it's just like the shots aren't that interesting when the person's that close to a wall,
Yeah. And there's no walls, so
yeah. So back to a burlap sack.
Our production designer found this amazing antique wooden, like fainting couch bed, kind of weird thing that was wicker, and it was super heavy, and we're like, oh, that would be cool. That could just be like a giant ball and chain for her, that we just chain her to that, and she can kind of move around the room and be in different places and stand on it, but you're not going to run through the jungle dragging this 150-pound bed behind you. So that was a real great opportunity just to kind of get some space and breathe more and have some diversity of angles and where we're filming and reverses and stuff like that.
And I should know this because of all the information I've received, but is any of this going to be in like the special features on the digital release or the Blu-ray? Because this seems like fascinating stuff to explore.
All of it.
Yeah, the Blu-ray is and the DVD are going to be pretty awesome. I think we've got a full commentary track, which is great, I guess. If you like to hear,
if you're enjoying these voices,
if you like these voices,
if you want more.
But then additionally we have like a feature length behind the scenes documentary that gets really into the weeds, a lot of detail. We have some pretty cool, we've got about almost 30 minutes of deleted and extended scenes.
Oh, wow.
There's a whole new scary scene that's not in the movie. Then we did a bunch of storyboard comparisons because we have some really nice storyboards, and a version of the ending that we weren't able to film because of budget, that we did draw. So we kind of edited it together with the sound, and you can kind of see the original dream for an even crazier ending. So yeah, there's over 2 hours plus the commentary of stuff, if you're into stuff. So
yeah,
a lot of people into horror movies are into the stuff. So
yeah, definitely. And then you mentioned that the entire set was kind of self-contained and the production was self-contained. I always have to ask, this was filmed before COVID and lockdown, right? Because this could have easily been a film that you filmed during that time, just because of the size of the cast and the set.
Yeah, we wrapped 2-3 days before the lockdown. But we actually were wearing masks.
The COVID demon through your reckless production.
We were pretty concerned. Well,
went to that
first
cave.
of all, we were wearing masks a lot of the time on the set anyway, because there was so much
haze,
allergens and haze and stuff from the plants and the dead plants and the straw and the dirt and all that stuff. So we kind of got used to that anyway. But then in Puerto Rico, where we filmed the exteriors and we filmed the cave stuff, this was when there were probably 8 cases in America or something at that point, but it was all over the news, and the cruise lines were already kind of messed up, and there were rumors that it had come from a bat or something. And we go into this cave, and there's probably, I would say conservatively, 100,000 bats all around us, above us, and we're just like, oh man, if one of those bats poops COVID in our mouth, we're so angry. But we made it out alive. And we had one of our members of our crew had a crazy flu, and it was only 5 of us in Puerto Rico, maybe 8. And we were like, man, does he have COVID? We just thought we were all gonna die. But we made it out alive, and then we came back, and kind of on the flight back, they started shutting stuff down, and then we did all the post and the VFX and the mix and everything, and in these rooms that you see now, basically.
That's really good timing. I mean, I can't even imagine if they have locked down in the middle of it. What would you have done? Just kind of left the set? Maybe it would have come back and been more weather. It would have actually looked.
It's been a good short film.
Yeah,
it would have been.
Would have cut the storyboards.
And then everyone died because they were all dead at the end.
It would be an enormous waste of money.
Yeah. It was crazy, and it was fun. It was interesting because we've, in other movies that we've produced through Soapbox Films and stuff like that, reshoots are always a part of the process, or just reimagining, we'll just get it this way and do it this way instead. And it was pretty prohibitive to think like that. So we would just keep diving back into the footage, and I think was the right decision overall for all of those things. But yeah, we storyboarded different sequences. We had the actors record stuff. We were like, maybe if it opens up again, we'll reshoot this thing. And we didn't end up needing it, but
that's very lucky. Speaking of the actors, I'm kind of curious how you found them, especially Brigitte. Did you just put out a casting call for, hey, do you want to be tortured for an hour? Sign up in Puerto Rico, so maybe it bounces out. Sign up now, or
Yeah, well, most of it we shot in Los Angeles.
Okay.
We just did a couple days in Puerto Rico, but yeah, not too exciting story there. Just a regular. We hired a really good casting director, and she did the things she does. Started auditioning people, kind of a open call, I guess, for Latina actresses, and she would bring us. We'd have week after week. She'd be like, "Well, here's 12 more people," and that she liked, because she would call it down. I'm sure there were hundreds, but and it just took forever to find Cristina, played by Brigitte, Canales. It was just a super hard role. We didn't realize until we kind of got into it that it was such a hard role to cast, because there was a lot of different sides to her, and people could kind of hit 2 or 3 but not the 4th, or vice versa. And we started to get pretty nervous, because we found the one I was the most worried about was Luz, the Bruja, and the first day of callbacks we found Julia. She was amazing.
Awesome.
And we found Sal on the first day of callbacks, and Andrea who played Miranda. And we were like, great, we got our cast. All we need is that person who's on screen every single day.
And there's the emotional connection with the entire audience.
And that took a couple of months. And we almost canceled the shoot, because we couldn't find her, and we kept pushing it, and we couldn't really afford to ask our crew to wait any longer. They needed to take jobs. So yeah, we found her kind of in the 11th hour and hit the ground running. Because of that, we didn't have any like rehearsal time with her, and we didn't really want to like lock in the other leads, especially the Miranda character, because we wanted to know who the Cristina was, because they were going to play off each other. And so we didn't really get any audition time or rehearsal time. We had to jump in, kind of just hit the ground running, and everybody doing their homework and figuring out on set. And it eventually all came together, but it was kind of by the skin of our teeth for a little while there.
Oh, that sounds like indie filmmaking if I've ever heard it. And yeah, like Bridget's character, Cristina, has like there's so many facets to it. Like especially what I was noticing, and I noticed this in a lot of exorcism films, is it's like physically demanding, because she had to like arch her back and kind of move around in very tight spaces, and I can imagine that must have been difficult to find, along with everything else that you have to ask her to do. So
yeah, she's super like athletic, and I think that paid off big time in this movie, because she was tied up in weird positions, and on the ground, and on the concrete, and strapped down, and puking stuff, and fighting, and wrestling, and stabbing, and like there was just so much for her to do, and be acting at the same time. So it was, she was almost like a stunt performer half the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But she really pulled it off.
And Marcos, I always like to ask this, if I've got the writer on, is this kind of how you envisioned the characters when you were writing this, or do you not actually have like people in mind as you're writing, and you just kind of go through the concepts?
Great question. I'm not someone who usually like visualizes, let's say, like famous actors in the roles. Like some people can write and they're like, he looks like James Gandolfini or whatever, like I've never been that sort of thing. So there is a vision in my head of what the people look like and what the set looks like. And it all goes out the window once you find the right cast and the right people, first of all. Like, for example, Sal Lopez, who plays Javi in the movie, he was described in the script as this like just big brooding, brute of a man, right? Like this huge guy who can just toss Cristina around and do all those things. And when we saw Sal Reed, it was like, nope, it's not that. It's certainly this guy. He embodied just all those other characteristics that were there and just less obvious. And he still looked strong, but
he also really like enhanced some of the kind of subtler aspects that were in the script, but really kind of made those shine in ways where like, oh, he gets it. Great. Let's get this guy.
So you see that in all the actors, and then they just bring, you know, a good actor will just bring so much of themselves and so much of their own experiences into it that they reshape the character in really fascinating ways. So if you hold on too tight to whatever was written or the intention of the line, you end up destroying what's being created. You know, if it's like, no, that's supposed to be a joke though, you're supposed to say it funny, and it's like, meh, that doesn't quite work out. And then in terms of like the rest of the vision of the script, I mean, you know, once you get a talented director involved, they're going to start making decisions to bring a unifying vision to it. Once you've collected incredible production designers and, you know, makeup designers and artisans of all sorts into a movie, then they're all lending their time and talent to then totally transform whatever was on the page into something bigger than what, you know, one imagination can even capture. So I always say it doesn't look like what I thought of. It just looks way, way better.
It's a good tagline. Yeah. And the script is also, it feels like it's kind of half in Spanish, half in English. Did you write it that way, or was that filled in as the film progressed?
There's a lot of Spanish in there that was written into the script. There's certain scenes that we knew we would have to rely on how fluent our actors were. So maybe, you know, there's a scene where Luz is saying something very quickly in Spanish and Miranda is very quickly translating it. So for a scene like that, I just wrote the translated parts and then worked backwards with Luz or with Julia to kind of supply the other half of it. And then we also had Nuat, which is kind of an ancient language that we decided, instead of just writing gibberish language or, you know, demon language, we thought, okay, let's stay true to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, let's keep getting older and older and older, and really worked with a translator, did the best we could, worked with a translator to translate as much as possible into Nuat. You know, there's certainly words that they just don't exist. So the translator would be like, well, this kind of says exorcism, but it's not quite that, you know, or whatever the words were.
Demon be gone or something instead of exorcise. Like they make,
I cast you out or whatever. It's like demon be gone. Yeah, whatever. And then our cast would listen to those recordings and try to get it right as much as possible and, you know, perform it as best we could. We were trying to honor the language and at least do nods to it. You know, I'm sure if you are, I think there's like 1 million people on Earth that even speak Nuat anymore, right, Chris? It's very low.
Pretty small, but it's a big language for a language that is kind of
pretty much lost.
Lost. You know, like more people speak it than Latin, probably. You know, as like a language that they would speak. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people in the church that know Latin, but I could have just lied there too. So who knows? Don't take that for
But I mean, it was really speaking to a lot of the things that the movie was speaking to in terms of like reaching back, trying to find this culture that you've lost a connection to, that you don't speak anymore. And so those were sort of the things that we were challenging ourselves as filmmakers to also take up that journey. And see if we could.
Andrea had that. She had that whole monologue, like as the demon speaking in Nahuatl. That it's pretty crazy because that's her actual voice. We just kind of like played with it in post. We didn't dub it in, and so she memorized a huge passage that was all in a language she'd never heard before. So it was pretty exciting to see that play out on screen or on the set.
And I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't a like Nuat dub special feature track. I mean, I feel like that could have been just the creme de la creme of this set
for the 20th anniversary. Well,
if we make it that far, we'll see. Our world seems
because later we after we shot it, we started working with a guy named Martin Espino, who's a music like an ancient Mexican pre-Columbian expert in music. And he actually knows a fair amount of Nahuatl terms and stuff. And we're like, where were you 4 months ago? Because we were like emailing and like it was a long distance thing with the person that we found. And it turns out this guy was like best buddies with Sal Lopez from high school. He was right at our fingertips. But You know, we just started
But he
gathering
was-
as many people as we could over the course of the filming that knew stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of preserving, like not just the language, but what Martine brought to the movie was these instruments, these pre-Columbian instruments that, like, no, I mean, who gets to hear these things get played? Not only did he know how to play or breathe through the death whistle, which he knows the Nwat word for it. I can't remember what it is.
Hekat.
Hekat.
Yeah.
And he knew how to use that as an instrument, which is incredible. Like, there's only a handful of people I would imagine who could do that. And then played all these incredible, you know, instruments like these water drums or half of a tortoise shell, or just all these things that don't have necessarily classical notes. They're kind of played in their own.
Yeah, they're not tuned
range.
at all. So
Yeah, they're
he had
not
to,
tuned.
so he worked with our composer Ben to actually kind of go backwards and be like, here's what these can do, and recorded all this, you know, what they could do and how they sound the best. Because if Ben had written like a G flat, like they never would have gotten it with a turtle or whatever, you know. So, or like an
The
old
turtle doesn't
gourd.
go to a G flat.
Yeah,
Stuff
or
the
a
shell
gourd.
with something.
I mean, some of the things had like 2 holes, you know, so it's like, well, it's just how he breathes and holds it. And so they would just do these long kind of exploratory recording sessions, and just kind of talk more in almost like acting term, you know, just feeling and tone. And he would record stuff and they would do it over, and then they would take this whole pile of amazing recordings and then be like, well, how can we incorporate maybe classical guitar alongside this or whatever? But they had to work backwards, because otherwise it would have been completely dissonant and atonal and difficult to listen to. But it was a cool way to go about it. It's the way we went around a lot of the like design of the imagery as well. So it was kind of cool that happened also in post with the music.
Awesome. And I always like to ask this whenever there's a horror film, was there anything creepy that happened on set? Any unexplained occurrences?
Oh yeah, we had one.
Oh yeah.
One good one. There's the red book that she looks through that has all the kind of demonic lore and kind of recipes and stuff like that have been handed down through generations from the Brujas. And we eventually had to shoot, like, you know, just close-ups of the book, her flipping through the book and reading stuff and pointing at stuff. And it took, like, the first time we did it took about 40 minutes to film it, you know, because there's so many pages. I'm like, well, let's flip from right to left, flip from left to right, pan up and down, whatever. Like, it took forever. And it was the kind of thing we kept putting off, because like it's like close-ups are kind of boring, and you know, you've got these amazing actors standing around in makeup and you don't want to waste an hour getting shots of some pages, but we needed it because the book was so important. So we filmed that, got it in, you know, and our nowadays it's not like, you know, it's not film, it's a little memory stick that comes out of the camera. So they take that out and they take it to the editor and they kind of copy the footage off of it, and they came back and said the chip is corrupted.
Oh,
Like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, none of the footage at all worked on that entire thing. It was like an hour of production.
oh my gosh.
But at least it was just that, you know, it wasn't like these really difficult scenes with the actors and whatever. We're like, okay, fine. So let's get a new chip, put it in there, and we'll find another time. So we found another time, probably shot, we're a little faster this time, 25, 30 minutes. Same thing happened. Like, this chip was also corrupted. And we're like, what is happening? Like, this book is haunted.
Really? At least you knew what the demons didn't want you to film. So,
So then, yeah. So then we did a third time. I think we got it down to like 10 minutes. I'm like, I'm not doing this. And this one finally worked, but it was so weird because it was just this haunted book. And then like 8 months later, we're doing interviews with Brigitte for the behind the scenes documentary. And she started talking about it. And we're in Burbank, California, where, you know, it's sunny 364 days a year. And in the middle of her talking about that anecdote, there was thunder that interrupted her talking, and we had to redo the interview. So yeah, there's something going on with that.
So if any of your listeners have just heard that story, you're cursed.
They're all, it's like The
just-
Ring.
I
They're
hope
all-
you- I hope
We
you
have to
just
pass
burned
the
that
story
book
on.
somewhere.
I just
Where is
erased
that?
your hard drive.
Oh, gosh. I mean, it's your time. So
Yeah, you're gonna have to get Norton antivirus for this.
where is this book, and is it which church?
Right here.
Oh, it's right
Oh
here.
god, okay. No.
Scaring me.
That explains why I
Next
can't
to it.
see you, Chris. There's
Yeah,
there's
that's why
what's going on?
that's why I'm having internet problems.
Awesome. So I know we have a limited time, so I'm gonna move. I call it the lightning round. It's just very short, lightweight questions about the film. See how your experiences map to things that happen in the film. You can feel free not to answer them. I won't be offended, but I try to keep them very answerable. The first question is, what's the longest time you've been stuck in one place?
You're looking at it.
Right now,
Pandemic.
during quarantine.
2 years.
Yeah, makes sense. Has anyone ever called you possessed?
I mean, definitely people have questioned my saying. I like writing this is like super dark stuff, but it's not my normal.
When we used to live together in college, and when he writes, he acts it all out in the characters, and you hear him he's in his bedroom on the other side of the door, like speaking in different voices. You're like, that guy's speaking in tongues. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if I called him possessed, but I whispered it to the other people around me.
You whispered it to your demon book. And yeah,
It's true.
Have you ever been to an exorcism?
No.
Have you ever been to the exorcism steps in DC?
Oh,
Where are they? I've been
So
all
they're in
over DC.
Georgetown. They're kind of well, if you know the area, it's where I think the Whitehurst Freeway meets M Street, but it's in Georgetown, kind of on the edge of Georgetown.
I
In
don't think I
Washington,
have.
DC.
I've been to the
I may have
dinosaur
seen
across the street from the Natural History Museum.
There you go.
it.
Maybe
Same.
more exciting, although the
How
steps
older
are
away
impressive.
is there than a dinosaur?
Yeah, there you go.
These are good.
Yeah. So let's see. What would your least favorite of the exorcism rituals be? The chugging of goat milk, the snakes, the vomiting hair, the like reaching in. Any of those?
The one that we cut before we shot,
Oh, okay.
which was eye scraping,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
disgusting. And we just couldn't. We actually were researching how to do it, and we watched a lot of movies that had like eye gore, eye trauma type stuff, and we're like, well, they've done it. We can't do anything better. So we just
Nothing
cut it.
grosser. And then a close second would, I guess, be the second half of the psychic surgery. The first half is fine. Just pull out some teeth and stuff. That part's fine.
Second half, not so fun.
Second half worse.
Do you like goat's milk?
I don't mind it.
I haven't tried goat's milk. I mean, I like
No,
goat
you
cheese.
did one time, didn't you,
Yeah, that
Chris? When we
research.
were in New York, do you remember we went over to Greg's place and he had milk for coffee with his coffee, but it was goat milk? Do you remember that?
Jeez, I do.
I
Not
still remember that.
I'm
That was
sure
probably
I
the
like
last
it.
time I had like goat milk.
I like oat milk.
It's pretty close.
Draw a
It's
G
just
on
one
there.
letter. Do you wear any religious symbols or spiritual symbols? Cross, dream catcher, anything like that?
Do
Evil
my
eye?
mala beads right here
there
that
you
I'm
go.
wearing right now. So that's more Buddhist style.
It burns every time I put one on, so I try not to.
And Chris, you just have your demon book, so that's your religious symbol as well.
Yeah, I would be kicked out.
And the last question is, do you do anything in the old way? Like, is there anything that you do specifically? Like, I like sometimes like to print things out and read them on paper. Is there anything that
Yeah,
you do?
Oh,
Marcus, look over his little shoulder there. He likes real typewriters.
Oh, there we go.
Awesome.
Do I do anything in the old way? I just
I mean, you do take film.
I just started painting.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
you do painting. You
It's out of
do
focus.
photography
I like-
and like
yeah,
medium
actually,
size and
I
old
have,
lenses.
I have like a old I don't know where it is. It's behind me somewhere. I have an old Hasselblad camera. It's the one that they took to the. I mean, it's not the one, but it's the one that they took to the moon when they went to the moon. And big, you you look down through it and it's backwards, and it sounds like a machine gun when you pull the trigger. And it's great.
There we go. Perfect. Connecting
Old
to the
school.
old ways, both of you.
Not as
So,
old as this, but old, 60 years old.
Yeah, no, it's not a typewriter old, but so the film is The Old Ways. It's coming to DVD, Blu-ray, and digital on October 12th, 2021. This is Marcos Gabriel and Chris Alender, the writer and director. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for joining me and on all the interesting stories. It's sounds like a really good set that if you're a fan of the film or if you're a fan of horror, it's a great thing to check out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was Marcos Gabriel and Chris Alender, the writer and director of The Old Ways, which is releasing on VOD, digital, DVD and Blu-ray on October 12th, 2021. It's an old school exorcism film that's set in Latin America, so it has some interesting cultural touches as well, and it's just a really good horror film. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot and make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.